What's going on, everyone? Hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope y'all got a chance to watch the Super Bowl. It's probably one of the better ones that we've seen in quite some time. Unlike the NBA All Star game, which left a lot to be desired. Uh, I know it's been a while since I've been on or recorded anything. Sometimes life gets in the way. But as usual, I want to take the time to say thank you to anyone who's watched the previous episodes. Give me a like, a follow, any constructive words of criticism. Like I said, greatly appreciate that. Today's episode is called Same Stuff, Different Day. Now, as many of you know, February is Black History Month. Actually, I think everyone should know that. Um, but as much as progress as we've made in society, I think we still have a long way to go. I feel like in many ways we're still dealing with the same stuff. It's just a different day and era. Many people are unaware of some of the issues that we're facing because they see things as race neutral. They kind of look at things through a colorblind lens. They feel that race doesn't matter in getting ahead. There's an even playing field or a meritocracy. Um, the one thing that's dangerous about that is people become unaware of white privilege. It becomes invisible to them. They think because I didn't own slaves. It's not I didn't have any part in that. That they don't see that things are still separate but equal. But many of us know that it is still institutionalized racism that goes on today. Now, me personally, don't get me wrong, I think Black History Month is a great thing, but I think it can have a negative viewpoint as well. We take the time to acknowledge the sacrifices and achievements of many Black men and women in our society, our world, I should say. But I also feel like, in a way, it kind of still segregates things because we have to take our time to actually take a month to acknowledge their achievements. When, in all actuality, it should be incorporated in world history or American history for that matter. But unfortunately, you have people like Ron DeSantis who want to ban teaching of critical race theory. And again, that's dangerous because ignorance is not bliss in the real world. I think many people are quote unquote racist because they're unaware of what happened in the past. Another thing that really bothers me is that a lot of the accomplishments that people have made in our society seem to get whitewashed or erased from history until someone actually makes a point to acknowledge them in a movie or documentary. People like the women in Hidden Figures, or the Tuskegee Airmen in Red Tails, or the first Black Navy diver in Men of Honor. Many of us didn't hear about those people until we actually saw the movies. But if you tend to think about it, these things have been happening since the beginning of time. Our society has put up barriers in place to segregate Black people. If you look at the beginning of our history of America, yes, slavery. But even after slavery was abolished by Lincoln, they put rules and laws in place. Jim Crow laws, segregation, excuse me, to keep us down. Even someone who I feel has a tremendous impact in our society as FDR, and had separate but equal agendas, I believe. I mean, you look at the New Deal that he proposed to help save us from the depression that we went through. Things like the GI Bill, Social Security, the Homestead Act. Blacks were excluded from many of these bills. And because of that, it created redlining, which put quote unquote low income people, primarily black, in low income areas, aka the ghettos, where property values were low, which, as we know, affects money for schools because schools are primarily funded by property taxes. This has caused people of color to live near chemical plants which produce toxic fumes. They live farther away from grocery stores, so they're not able to access fresh food. And many of the places that they live in, the water is undrinkable, like Flint, Michigan. They live in crumbling infrastructures and with uh, toxic paint such as lead. Redlining, also known as housing segregation, correlates to some of the issues that we have today with minorities and law enforcement. Many of these areas are aggressively policed um, based on racial profiling, also known as spatial profiling. Living in certain areas can make you more likely to be stopped by the cops. This aggressive policing, seen in these quote unquote black areas, makes the citizens not trust law enforcement. So when that happens, crimes go unsolved. I mean, if you really take a look at it statistically, things are more separate or segregated than ever. Look at the wealth gap. Um, if you look as far as going back as the 90s, which isn't that long ago, it's gotten worse. The wealth gap, the median income for whites is about 187,000, I want to say. Meanwhile, the average median income for blacks is about 14 or 15,000. Home ownership is growing more vastly segregated. Home ownership for whites is about 72 or 3%. For blacks is about 42%. Um, a white high school graduate is more likely to make more in his life, or their lifetime, I should say, than a black college graduate, which is just absurd. Because you would think getting a degree would give you a leg up or an advantage, but in many cases it doesn't. I mean, just look at the war on drugs, which is an absolute joke still to me. But back in the 80s under Reagan, uh, the say nope to dope and the dare classes and stuff, there was no effort to stop drugs from coming into the inner city like crack. They arrested young black men, which broke the black home in substantial numbers and gave them lengthy sentences. Meanwhile, you look at today's society, now that the opioid crisis has hit the suburbs, oh, we have to do something. We have to find these corporations for getting people addicted to painkillers. Where was this effort when black people were dealing with crack and cocaine and things like that? None. I mean, you look at some of the other issues that were going on today, like banning abortion, that affects all women overall, but particularly black women. The mortality rate for women, particularly women of color, is substantially higher. So now you're making it almost impossible for a woman to get an abortion or other screenings that they need. I mean, and it's just more and more things that I feel like we're going backwards instead of forwards. And these things need to be addressed with our local leaders. Um, I mean, if they're not trying to practice or preach unity, then they have no business being in office at all. I mean, that just makes common sense. And now many people ask, what can we do to try and mend the bridges, and bring us together? A lot of people mention reparations, which some people are opposed to tremendously. And I can understand why to a degree, but it's not a bad idea to start a discussion and somehow to give reparations to Black Americans. I mean, it's hard to quote unquote pull yourself up by the bootstraps. I mean, it's not impossible. But when the other team has had a 400-year advantage, I mean, how do you compete with that? We're just now getting into a position where you see a lot more Black families have generational wealth when it's been happening for white families since the beginning of time. I mean, how do you compete with that? You're just now starting to see more and more Black people go to college when before that wasn't even a possibility. So, I mean, you can take that with a grain of salt if you'd like, but I mean, it's a serious issue and a discussion that I think that we need to have. We need to talk about ending all this redlining, segregation, um, so people can actually be treated equally, that we don't need things like affirmative action, quote unquote, for people to get ahead or be employed or try to make a better way from their families. Uh, but again, these are just my thoughts, just me being honest. I would love to hear your opinions and your views on this situation or this topic. Well, I will catch you guys on the flip side. Peace out. Stay safe.